Alright, I am back with another video, and on November 30th, 2023, I made what I consider to be the worst video on this channel, or at the very least the worst build. I made a build called the Geomancer because it was highly requested that I try and do something with the manipulation of Earth and Earth magic. Now, at the time, Baldur's Gate 3's modding scene was restricted only to PC, and I was still keeping my builds vanilla, so really there wasn't a lot of Earth magic to be utilised until you got to the higher levels, where you got things like Conjure Elemental, which can summon an Earth Elemental, and Wall of Stone. So I decided to, quite comically, make it so that the build is all about throwing rocks at people. Yeah, it was really, really bad, and still to this day I kind of regret making it, which is why I get to put Remastered in the title of this video, because thanks to a few mods that are available to all platforms, both PC and console, we can now create a true Geomancer, which is what I have decided to do today. This is going to be a build that is solely focused on using Earth magic to its most powerful effect, being able to do things like create difficult terrain and various different surfaces that can make trouble for our enemies, and then being able to use battlefield control and other forced movement manipulation to keep our enemies in these zones of, well, difficult terrain, as I said. So we're going to be a master of the Earth, moving it as we see fit, and being also able to stride across the Earth as well. We are masters of the land, and as such, nothing will stop us while we are on our home turf. Honestly, this has been an extremely fun build to make. The amount of freedom that I get with things like Mistress spells and also another few mods that I'll be getting to in a minute, just it makes build making so much better. So yes, this build does require some mods, but again, they're available on all platforms, and the Mistress spell mods are so well balanced, they basically feel like they're in the base game anyway, so please give them a try. But without further ado, let's get into the build. We're going to be kicking things off, surprise surprise, as a druid. The land is old as time itself, and, well, it has become dormant but wise. It watches over all life on the planet, aside from that in the ocean, which I'll get to in another video, and as such, I think going with a druid and having wisdom be our primary spellcasting stat does make sense. For our race today, we are going to be playing as a half-wood elf. I don't know why I know why I decided to go with half-elf specifically, but you can go with wood elf as well as you want. This is because we get an additional bit of movement speed as a wood elf, in addition to all the usual stuff. We gain an additional bit of movement speed, and again, I kind of wanted to play with the idea of getting more movement speed with this build. Again, as long as we're stepping on the land, we are its master, and so I almost like to feel like as you step on the ground, it kind of shifts a bit to give you more movement, like you're kind of moving along one of those like floor escalators that you see at like an airport or something, but it's the Earth and we're manipulating it. Well, I kind of wanted to go for a little bit of like Earthbender vibes with this one, but this build doesn't have any monk levels, not this time. That will be another build, but I really wanted to get the higher level spellcasting with this one, but a proper Earthbender would be pretty fun. So obviously, as I said, we are a druid. This is going to give us access to a couple of cantrips, and of course, we get 2 Earth-related cantrips right off the bat. See, I'm already having fun with this. First up, Magic Stone allows us to transmute magical stones that deal 4 to 9 bludgeoning damage and use our spell casting ability for the attack rolls. Basically, we're hucking rocks at people again, but this time, it actually works. We also get the Mold Earth cantrip, allowing us to call forth small areas of mud or destroy them, a bit like Create or Destroy Water. This spell can be cast while silent, and basically what mud kind of does is it makes difficult terrain that makes it harder for enemies to get across. They're a bit slowed. This is just a very small scale version of this that we'll have at the moment, but we will be getting bigger versions a bit later on. As for our ability scores, they do look a bit weird, but it will make sense as we go. Strength is at 12. I wanted to have a little bit of the remnants of the old build here, and I do think this character would be quite physically able, dealing with literal rocks all the time and being out in the wilderness as they are an outlander, so I figured giving them a little bit of strength would make sense. Dexterity is at 8 because I couldn't really find any gloves that I explicitly wanted to use with this build, and it just made the build a bit stronger overall since we're wearing light armor to go with the gloves of dexterity to push our dexterity to 18, so we're going to have an 18 in dex here. Constitution is at 16, this is going to give us a decent chunk of HP, and I kind of wanted it to be quite high since a lot of our big spells are going to be concentration based, so I wanted to make sure that we had that at least. 16 is going to be perfectly fine for this level, for this build, but if you wanted to, you are going to get an opportunity to bump this up to an 18 later. Next up for our intelligence, we have it at 12. I don't know why, I just wanted intelligence on this build. Swap it out for charisma instead if you want. And wisdom is at 17. We're going to be able to bump this up with a half feat later, as well as the fact that we are going to want it as our main spellcasting modifier, so we wanted this pretty high. Skill proficiencies! First up, because we are a wood elf, we are going to automatically get proficiency in stealth, and because we're an outlander, we get athletics and survival, which means we get to pick any of the druid skill proficiencies left to us. I went with nature and animal handling, but honestly, something like perception could also work. It's entirely up to you, but I like animals, so we're going to go with animal handling. Next up, at level 2 of Druid, we get to pick our subclass, and surprise, surprise, we are going with Circle of the Land. Circle of the Land is obviously the land class, so it kind of made sense to go with it, and this is going to give us access to more spellcasting, and more spellcasting means we're going to be able to do more stuff with the earth. So overall, it just made a ton of sense to pick this up. So with this, we do get to pick an extra bonus cantrip. Up to you really what you want to take here, it doesn't really matter. Guidance is always useful. If you want to take inspiration from Divinity Original Sin 2, then Poison and Acid were part of the Geomancer class there, so you could go with that. Thunderclap could also work if you want to go for a bit of an earthquake effect, making thunder damage another option for this build. And there's also Thorn Whip here if you want a bit of forced movement shenanigans, which would make sense for this build, but we'll get to that a bit later. For now, we are using a quarterstaff, so I'm going to take Shillelagh for use later. Next up, we do get to prepare some spells, and as you can see, we already do have some pretty saucy ones prepared. Longstrider is going to give us extra movement speed, which again, I want for this build. We are the Master of the Land, we want to move across it swiftly and with grace. Next up, Absorb Elements. This is just a great spell to take if you can get your hands on it. It works like Shield as a reaction, and it makes it so you take half damage from an elemental attack targeting you, dealing an additional 1d6 of that element type on your next attack. So, it's basically just a bit of a damage reduction spell, gives us a bit of tankiness. We'd always love that, and we're not really using our reaction for much else on this build, so we might as well take it. Next up, Earth Tremor. Cause a tremor in the ground, miring the area around it yourself in thick mud and possibly knocking creatures prone. So not only is it knocking creatures prone, we are also spreading the mud effect for 10 turns, which gives difficult terrain, meaning that the enemy's movement speed is halved. Yes, this will halve our movement speed as well, but as we level up, we'll have ways to get around that. And finally, I've decided to go with Snare. We're going to be getting a more thematically appropriate spell a bit later on, but Snare is going to feel quite on theme for the build. We get to place a magical trap that can knock enemies prone and ensnare them when they walk over it. Ensnaring it means that the entity cannot move, attack rolls against it have advantage, and it attacks with disadvantage and makes dex saves with disadvantage as well. This doesn't cost our concentration, and it's a dexterity saving throw, so it can be a little bit more battlefield control to keep things flowing. As for your final spell here, we're going to be chopping and changing quite a bit as we go up in levels, so just pick whatever feels right to you at the moment. You could go for Entangle, Enhanced Sleep, Speak with Animals, though I don't recommend it, our charisma is rather low. Or you could even go with Thunderwave if you want to play on that earthquake thing that I was talking about earlier. So pick your poison. Or don't pick your poison, because we don't deal with poison. Yet. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. At Druid level 3, we get to choose level 2 spells, and thanks to our subclass, we get to choose a Circle of the Land spell thingy. Basically, these are extra spells that get added to our spell list without actually needing to prepare them or anything like that. So we basically just get more spells overall per long rest, which is really, really nice. So with this, you get to choose a domain to pull your spells from. Now, none of these domains come with any of the new modded spells, so you are going to have to pick something that works for whatever you're trying to do at the time. And for our first options here, I mean, there's some cool things here, but there's nothing really I would immediately say is worth grabbing right off the bat, so pick your favorite. I think in my testing, I went with, let's see, I think I'm pretty sure I went with the Desert, because it gives us access to Blur and Silence, two things which I think could be kind of fun. Blur can work in a way that, like, if you cause like a minor earthquake and the enemies see you kind of trembling and you're a bit, and like they're all kind of frazzled because they've been shaking, so you become a bit blurry, so you're a bit harder to hit. Silence I don't really got one for, but it's up to you if you want to take it or not. Feel free to swap these out, as I said. We also do get to pick some level 2 spells, as I already mentioned, and I'm going to say that these are the two you want to pick. Oh, that's 3 actually that you want to pick up at this level. First up is the obvious one, Earth Bind. This deals 2d8 bludgeoning damage and will bind a creature, basically making it so that it takes a bit of extra bludgeoning damage every turn, and attack rolls against it have advantage, disadvantage attack rolls against them have advantage, they gain disadvantage on dex saves, and blah 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 blah. It's all the usual stuff for binding, a bit like something similar to Hold Person, but Hold Person is a bit less on theme here, so I decided to just go with this for now. We literally I mean, it just makes so much sense. It's literally called Earthbind. We're using the earth to bind people down. It makes sense. We also gain access to Dust Devil, a spell that deals 1d8 bludgeoning damage, requires our concentration, and you surround yourself with a whirling dust cloud that deals 1d8 bludgeoning damage to all other creatures within 2 meters. At the end of each turn, it creates a cloud of fog around yourself, so basically like a little sandstorm, that blinds and heavily obscures creatures within it. This can blind us as well, but this is basically darkness that deals damage, which is kind of cool, so we definitely want to pick that up. And finally, for your last spell, Spike Growth. This is a classic spell that's part of the vanilla. For our concentration, we can basically cause sharp pieces of the ground to shoot up as hard spikes. Movement within this area is halved, and the creatures walking on the spikes take 2 to 8 piercing damage for every 1.5 meters it moves. So now we have our big battlefield control and earth spells, giving us a wide variety of ways to, you know, make our enemies basically do what we want them to do, which is great. Overall, this is a really powerful kind of spread to have at this level. The extra movement speed allowing us to move around in our own difficult terrain a bit easier, while having various different ways of messing with our opponents is just absolutely brilliant. I love this setup. This build's feel kind of comes online really early, which is great. Next up, at Druid level 4, we are going to get to choose our first feat, and this is really fun. A new mod got released a couple of days ago for consoles as well, which adds some of the feats from Tasha's. It's a work in progress, and they are adding the rest of them, but we have new feats to work with, and the feat that I want to use here is Telekinetic. Telekinetic allows us to bump up our Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma by 1 to a maximum of 20. Boom! Now we have 18 Charisma. We learn the Mage Hand cantrip, and as a bonus action, we can telekinetically shove nearby enemies, either pushing them or pulling them 10 feet either towards us or away from us. This is awesome. This allows us to flavor our Geomancy as us being able to telekinetically control the earth, as well as the fact that being able to push or pull enemies away or towards us, allowing us to manipulate where they are on the battlefield, choosing them, basically pushing them into our difficult terrain and other battlefield control effects, is massive. This is such a cool thing that I wish I had when I did things like the Absolute and such like that, but again, that series was vanilla only anyway. But like, such a cool feat to have. Rounds out our stat, gives us a really potent ability, and Mage Hand. Who doesn't love Mage Hand? We do also get to prepare another cantrip, speaking of Mage Hand, and it's up to you what you want to pick here. Now that we have Telekinetic, I feel like Thorn Whip isn't as useful for us, but you can absolutely go for that if you want. But I think Guidance is just a great overall cantrip for us. And we do get to choose another level 1 spell here. Again, you have to kind of mix and match what you want to pick and when. At Druid level 5, we're going to gain access to level 3 spells. We are getting Wild Shape stuff here as well, so at this point you can make an extra attack on Wild Shape, which is going to make this build a lot more tanky, but I really think Wild Shape isn't really what we're going for here. Use it in a pinch if you need it, but otherwise, let's stick to our spellcasting. We're going to get another Circle of the Land kind of domain here, and this one is a bit easier to pick from. At the end of the day, it is up to you what you want to pick, but there are a lot of good options here. There's Grassland, which could give you haste. There's Desert in this case, would give you protection from energy and Hypnotic Pattern. Maybe not that one so much. But I ended up going with either Underdark or Swamp. Now you may be thinking, why Underdark or Swamp? Well, I personally go with Swamp because I don't really care for Gaseous Form on this build, but you can go with that if you want. Swamp will give us Vampiric Touch, which I don't really care for. It's not really part of the build. What I do like, though, is Stinking Cloud. It creates a cloud of gas so nauseating that it prevents creatures from taking turns. But what this does is it basically makes it so that we can, break open the earth and let sulfur from the ground below kind of rise up, causing a nauseating effect that makes it so that creatures can't take actions, which is huge. It is a con save, so it means it might be a little bit less useful into the late game. Otherwise, though, it's a really powerful battlefield control effect that I like. And while things like haste can be fun, haste would make sense again for striding over the land if you really want to go for it. But otherwise, I didn't really want to focus on concentrating on that spell all that much, so I just think it's best to just take something with a bit more utility, like Stinking Cloud, which is a very powerful battlefield control effect again. But if you don't like that and you want to take haste because you think it makes sense, absolutely go for it. Or just slap the Darkfire Shortbow on this build and get both. Saying. Next up, we do get to prepare level 3 spells now, which means we have a lot of new toys to play with, including Erupting Earth, a big controlled eruption that deals 3d12 bludgeoning damage and causes mud in the area that you do. This is basically Mud Fireball. Not quite as powerful as a fireball overall, but it does create that muddy terrain again. Every earth spell that we do is doing this, which is huge, so I'm very, very happy to have this on the build, and it is a solid chunk of damage. It's perfect for level 5 of the build. Then as for what else you want to take here, I would recommend Plant Growth, allowing us to split the land apart so that plants can grow, making it so people within this space have their movement speed quartered. This doesn't require concentration, meaning you can cast Plant Growth and then stack it with other difficult terrain effects, which is pretty powerful, so definitely recommend picking this one up. At Druid level 6, we're going to get our subclass feature, Lands Stride. Difficult terrain no longer affects us. Perfect! Now we basically feel none of the effects of our battlefield control spells, other than maybe some damaging effects here and there, but don't worry, that's not going to be a huge issue for long. Next up, we also do get to prepare another spell at this level. At this point, we've got most of the stuff that I would say is appropriate for this build. However, I do like getting Pass Without Trace. Again, you are a master of the land, and as long as you step on land, you can make it bend to your will. So making it so that your steps do not create any sound as the earth shifts to deafen your footsteps does kind of make sense, and making this work for the whole party, I quite like it, so I'm going to pick it up here. Next up, at Druid level 7, we gain access to level 4 spells, and there are some big ones at this level. We do also gain another Circle of the Land Domain thing, and it's up to you kind of what you want to pick here. But I quite like going for one of the ones that gives us, let's see, which one was it again? It's kind of up to you. Basically, you want to pick one that's either going to give you freedom of movement or conjure minor elementals, because we're going to be wanting both of those spells anyway. I ended up going with Forest. This is going to give us Conjure Minor Elementals and Grasping Vine. Grasping Vine comes from the ground, so it's good enough for me. It's not concentration based either, you just get to summon this, so I think it works out quite nicely. And also Conjure Minor Elemental is great because it allows us to summon 2 mud methods that can throw mud and explode into a muddy explosion that deals a bunch of damage. So yeah, we're getting summons on this build too, like a typical Druid, which is great. But now we get to prepare some more big boy spells. And again, it's kind of up to you. You're going to have to switch some things around. I'm going to take Snare off now. I think we've got better options than it. And we're going to be able to grab a few cool things. Namely, these 2 spells. Freedom of Movement, which is going to make it so not only just us, but our allies are no longer affected by difficult terrain as well, and cannot be magically paralyzed or restrained. So this means that even though we're setting up all these battlefield control effects that slow down our enemies, our allies don't have to suffer the same issue. Slap this on your Barbarian who wants to run in first thing, and they're not going to have a problem. In fact, you guys are probably going to get on pretty damn well, since all of your attacks deal bludgeoning damage, and even if you don't take Bear Totem, they resist bludgeoning damage. So yeah, pair this with a Barbarian, it's gonna go well. And next up, Stone Skin. Maybe if the Barbarian isn't tanking as well as you would like, and your enemies are coming towards you, you can use this spell to turn your skin into stone, meaning that you get the Barbarian's resistance of only taking half damage from bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. So overall, you can make yourself a bit more tanky, which if you decide to wild shape, this will persist into that, so you can become a very tanky wild shape if you need to. At Druid level 8, we get our second feat, and I'm just going to take an ability score improvement to bump up our wisdom to a total of 20, maxing it out. We do also gain another spell at this point, and I quite like taking Guardian of Nature here. Guardian of Nature has 2 forms. One is a beast version that makes strength attacks more powerful and does a few other things for us, but then we also have the tree variant, which is going to give us temporary HP, I think it's about 10, as well as making it so all of our dexterity and wisdom based attacks are made with advantage. So if we decide to use Shillelagh, we can make those attacks with advantage, which will be quite fun. Otherwise, it is just a nice buffing spell to just concentrate on if you've got nothing else you really want to focus on, and there's no reason not to have it, so we might as well pick it up. Next up, at Druid level 9, we're going to gain access to level 5 spells, including another Circle of the Land Domain, in which we are going with Mountain to give us Wall of Stone, allowing us to conjure a non-magical wall of solid stone that enemies have to get around or destroy, and Conjure Elemental, which is going to allow us to summon an Earth Elemental or Myrmidon, because we will have level 6 spell slots, that is going to fight for us. I really like the 5th level Earth Elemental. It's this big, monstrous mud thing that has big mud attacks and can cause minor tremors as well. It fits perfectly for this build, so I love it here. We also do get to pick up some more spells from the level 5 spell list as well, but there's not really anything here that I would say I absolutely want more than anything else. So really at this point we're just going to be picking up some low level utility spells as well, I think. I quite like picking up Enhanced Sleep, and we'll grab Snare back. Actually no, we won't grab Snare, we're going to grab Aid to give us and our summons more HP, because who doesn't want more HP? Makes us tankier. At Druid level 10, you gain improved wild strikes, and now your wild shapes can make 2 additional attacks, so that's 3 attacks per turn, which is great. We're also going to gain access to Nature's Ward. We can't be charmed or frightened by elementals and fae, and disease and poison no longer affect us. The charmed or frightened thing is okay, I guess, but it's very specific to specific creature types. But now making it so that disease and poison no longer affect us is actually really good. Gaining an immunity to a damage type is amazing, so we're certainly going to take that. We do gain another cantrip at this point, might as well take Form Whip. And finally, we do get to choose another spell here. I'll go back down and grab Snare again, but again, choose whatever you like. At Druid level 11, we have hit level 6 spells, and we actually do have some very interesting options available to us here. Namely, Fissure, which is a massive earthquake in a line that deals 8d8 force damage and can knock creatures prone. This is our big, we need damage now type spell, so this is how we get that damage. We're also going to be able to get Flesh to Stone, allowing us to restrain a foe by turning them to stone. Yeah, we have such control over the earth that we just encase our enemies in stone completely, and nothing else to it, they're done. And then finally, we can also slot in Elemental Investiture. This allows you to call upon one of 4 different elements to buff you and give you new abilities, resistances, and immunities. There is the Investiture of Stone, which will make us immune to bludgeoning damage, and also give us some new abilities as well, which is super, super cool. I'll let you guys experiment with that one and see what that does exactly, because I didn't get to it in my combat footage because I wanted to focus on other stuff like Fissure, but trust me, this is a fun little buff to have, and I'll let you guys discover that one for yourself. Now at this point, we kind of have everything that we need, so if you feel like there is a 1-level dip here that would make sense for you, feel free to take it. If you want to respec and start with Fighter to get concentration saving throw proficiency, you absolutely can. 1-level dip into Nature Cleric will give you an extra cantrip and some other stuff. Same thing can be done with Sorcerer. That will get you some more utility spells like Shield and concentration saving for proficiency if you decide to respec. Start with it. There's a few different things you can do here. If you want that little bit of earthbending, you could go with Monk. That would also give you a pretty potent unarmored defense if you decide you want to wear clothing with this build. So feel free to just mess around and decide if you want to do a 1-level dip here. But I think level 12 of Druid is going to give us something valuable as well. It is going to give us the ability to prepare an extra spell, which I have just lost my entire spell list because this game sucks. When you just click on the multi-classing menu, so you can pick up something else here. I'll just grab everything that we had before. There's some other stuff you can grab here, like this. You could grab something like Polymorph if you want. There's some fun shenanigans to be had there. You can do all sorts with that. Let's grab you as well, you as well, you as well. We got 4 more spell slots, perfect. You, and you. Excellent, we filled up the spellbook again. But we do get to pick a feat, and at this point you can take an ability score improvement, bumping up your constitution to an 18 for better concentration and more HP. You can go for the lucky feat, so if people save against your stuff, you can make it so they fail. There's a bunch of stuff here that I think could work well. You could explore some of the new Tasha's feats as well. Eldritch Adept might give you something. Fade Touched could give you Misty Step and another extra spell there. That could be really nice. But I actually took the Mobile feat for this build, and it worked really well, giving us more movement speed and making it so difficult terrain doesn't slow us down when we dash. That last part doesn't matter because of our subclass ability, but hey ho. But after making a melee attack, you don't provoke opportunity attacks from your target. Basically, just the flat buff to movement speed is amazing, since we can move over our difficult terrain without any issue, even without dashing. Just having that extra movement speed to be able to mess with our opponents as we run around the battlefield where they can't even chase us actually really works out nicely. Most of you may think, I don't really care about that, I'm just going to take the ability score improvement or something like that, but honestly, Mobile makes this build feel even more comfortable than it already does, so give it a try, you might find you like it. And that is the build. Overall, what you're going to be getting out of this is some of the most battlefield control I've ever had on a build. This build can output massive amounts of damage with things like erupting earth and earth tremor and such like that, but then also being able to create these mud surfaces which slow our enemies down, and then when they finally get out of that muddy area, we push them right back in with our telekinetic shove. You're very, very tanky, having a decent amount of HP with aid plus the wild shapes if you decide to use them. You're very resource efficient with things like natural recovery, giving you back expended spell slots, and you're able to summon things to swarm the battlefield with all sorts of different effects. And in fact, actually, I am going to have a quick look at Investiture of Stone. Let's have a look at it. So yeah, Investiture of Stone gives you resistance, not immunity to bludgeoning damage. My apologies, that was something I said incorrectly before. Yeah, so this gives you resistances. It's basically a bit like Stone Skin, as well as it's going to increase your armor class by 3, give you resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage from non-magical weapons. You can move through difficult terrain without spending extra movement and cannot fall prone, and then you gain the ability to slam the ground for 2 to 24 piercing damage, knocking enemies and other creatures prone. That's, where did that ability come from? I think it's somewhere around here. But yeah, basically this is a fun little ability if you want to try it out. Might not be worth a level 6 spell slot, but hey, I thought it was kind of fun. Anyway, let's cancel that for the looks. But yeah, things like Fissure deal massive amounts of damage. Wall of Stone is a great control spell. Again, being able to summon is just a huge thing. Here's Guardian of Nature, the Giant Tree variant, giving you advantage on con saves, 10 temporary hit points, wisdom-based attack rolls with Shillelagh will be made with advantage, and the area around you is considered difficult terrain, so now you're shifting the earth around you to make it difficult for enemies that just get close to you, and it's constantly happening. Unfortunately, that takes your concentration, but again, we have so many good options here. Plant Growth, Dust Devil, Earthbind, Magic Stone. Everything here just works so well. There's our telekinetic shove, Stinking Cloud if we really want to lay down that debilitating status effect, Pass Without Trace for stealthy stuff. You just have everything you could want on this build, and that Geomancer feel really comes through because we actually have Geomancy now. I love this. Again, I know some people are against the idea of using mods in this game for build making, but honestly, this is just a spells mod. That's all it is, and it just works so well. The other spell mod I'm using is the one that adds the 1D&D spell list revisions, so spells that weren't on the 2014 version of the class's spell list will now be added to it, so you get like the updated spell list from 2024 as well, which is nice. So there might be some extra things here as well that you can work with. Again, all mods will be linked in the description, the build making relevant ones anyway. But yeah, no, I just absolutely love this build because it feels fresh, it feels new, it feels like it's filling a new niche, and it has that same powerful feeling as the Pyromancer or the Cryomancer that I've made before. And it's just such an improvement on the original build that I made. It goes to show how important the modding scene is for revitalizing this game now that we're over a year in. But anyways, let's get into the equipment. If you watched my original Geomancer video, which I don't recommend you do, you'll notice some overlap with the equipment here, but some things have been changed up. First of all, weapon. You don't really need a weapon with this build. Any typical spellcasting thing will work. Staff of Spell Power, Mark of Heshkir, whatever you want to run. But I did find this quarterstaff called the Cacophony, which you can get fairly early on in the game. It deals an extra 1d4 of thunder damage and lets you cast Thunderous Smite. I'm just going to call this the Earthquake Bonking Stick. You just hit an enemy with a big bonk, and they're reverberating from the fact that the earth shook as you struck them. I don't know, it's just a kind of fun themed thing that I don't really get to show off often, so I thought it would be fun to show here. But again, equip whatever you like. No ranged thing, but like I said, the Darkfire Shortbow would probably make sense. Next up for our equipment, we have the Mask of Soul Perception. This is supposed to give you a +2 to initiative rolls, +2 to attack rolls, initiative rolls, and perception checks, but I equipped the wrong one from the mod that adds the things, and it doesn't show the status effect here. But again, the link will be in the description. But basically, this will give us a bit more of an initiative bonus, meaning that even with our 18 dexterity, we're going to be able to move first in combat quite often, and we'll be able to set up our battlefield control effects before our enemies even get to move. If you're not an idiot and equipped a modded version that doesn't actually have the abilities, what is wrong with me? Next up, Armour of for the record, early game option for this is the Flawed Heldas Helmet, giving you a +2 bonus to saving throws against spells, and a +1 bonus to your Constitution saving throws. We can wear medium armor with this, so we might as well take advantage of that. Next up, the Armour of Landfall. You gain a +1 bonus to your spell save DC, which is great for us. Whenever you start your turn on the plant growth or vine surface, you regain 1d4 hit points. We get to cast plant growth once per, I believe it's long rest, for free. No one's put short rest for free. That's very good. As well as you gain advantage on constitution saving throw checks, meaning that our concentration checks are much easier to make. Yeah, I mean, of course we were going to take this one. This is from the original build. It makes the most sense. I forgot to put it in my inventory here, but another game alternative to this could be the bark skin armor, giving you bark skin, so making your skin a little bit harder. Not quite as hard as stone, but you know, it's good enough. I thought that could work pretty well, so yeah, feel free to pick that one up as your early game option. Next up, I've already said it, the gloves of dexterity, setting our dexterity score to 18 and giving us a +1 to our attack rolls. Again, this just allows us to have slightly better stats across the board, but if you feel like you just want to have a 14 in dexterity and that'll be enough for you, feel free to just swap these out for something else. And finally, the boots of striding, again, playing into that idea that the earth shifts beneath us to, you know, quicken our step. Whenever we cast a spell that requires concentration, we gain momentum, so a bit more movement speed for that turn. While we are concentrating, we cannot be knocked prone or moved against our will. We dig our heels into the earth and nothing can move us, not even a steel watcher. Because yeah, you can't knock me prone while I'm concentrating with this. Haha. Stupid steel watchers always knocking me prone and making me lose my concentration. But anyway, the boots of striding just made too much sense and they're a great early game option, so pick them up. Next up, the Spellcrux Amulet, giving us basically an extra spell slot of whatever level we choose once per long rest, and we can do it we can regain that spell slot mid-combat as a bonus action. Obviously, this only works once per long rest, so feel free to swap this amulet out with whatever you want, but since a lot of our more powerful earth-based spells, especially Fissure, are level 5 and 6, Spellcrux Amulet made a lot of sense for this build. Next up, Crusher's Ring to give us a +3 meters of movement speed. Again, I wanted to have a lot of movement speed on this build, again, because battlefield control and yada yada yada, so this just makes sense to have. And finally, the Eversight Ring. Feel free to swap this out if you don't end up using Dust Devil very much, but if you do use Dust Devil, then this is going to stop you from being blinded. But if you find that Dust Devil isn't as useful into the later game, feel free to swap this out for something else. But yes, with this, you are technically doing Darkness Devil Sight shenanigans with this build. In a weird way. Not really. Kind of. Somewhat. Maybe. And finally, all of this armor is coloured in the Ferunian Colours mod's Dumathoin dye, which gives it this nice sandy brown and white colour, which I absolutely love. But yeah, that is the build, and overall, as I said, I am just so happy with how this turned out. The Mistress Spells mod absolutely carried this, obviously. Again, it's not a very complicated build, but the fact that everything just works so nicely together, and you do get to finally play the Geomancer archetype just feels so good. Oh, I've been waiting for this. Obviously, like I said, there is a bit more room to experiment with this concept as we go. That 1 level dip is open to you if you don't care about that 12th level feat. There is the idea of maybe taking some levels out of Druid, and maybe later on I'll make that Monk Druid build that is an Earthbender. There's so many different ways we can go about it, and I'm just so happy that these mods now exist for everyone, so we can finally explore more of what tabletop has always had to offer, in our own special way, of course. But yeah, overall, like I say, not much else to discuss here. I've gone over most of the build as it stands, so I will quickly discuss something. You guys were probably expecting a Halloween build today, and I decided to take at least a short break from doing those, if not prematurely cancelling that series. Unfortunately, they were just kind of frustrating to make, and I wasn't really enjoying myself towards the end, and it was reflected in the way those videos performed, as they didn't really do very well. The Lae'zel video especially was one of my worst performing videos in a very long time, so I've decided to put that series on pause and kind of give myself a bit of a mental break from racking my brain on trying to make those specific builds, and just exploring all these new toys I have. So you've got the Geomancer today, and, well, I guess spoilers, but you've got the Hydromancer coming up next. So thank you all so much for watching. Again, apologies if the cancellation of the Halloween build series kind of disappoints you, but I might go back and do them once I've kind of got a better idea of what I want to do. But I'll be honest, nobody was really watching them anyway, so who cares? Anyways, don't read into that too much. So that is going to do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.